Back for a fresh edition of The Smash here on Warchant TV. He's Irish O'Fell, managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang. I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And today, what we're doing is we're talking a lot about Florida State fall football camp. It's the first Smash of 2026 where we get to talk football on the eve of the season. Ira, okay, we've had a week plus now of getting to know this football team on the ground, either through interviews or a period of viewing practice last week, which was a hell of a lot longer than I expected to be out there watching the team, and some of the drills that we watched were good as well. There's a lot to uncover today, sir.
Yeah, man, it's been a pretty interesting preseason camp so far. I mean, nothing like out of the ordinary, but a lot of good, a lot of good details, a lot of good information. There's a lot of new players. Is the this era of college football, and so that's kind of. You just know that's going into it. It's not like the old days where you might have a roster that's sustained from year to year. Whole lot of new faces, whole lot of new names, and we're learning new details about a lot of these new faces and new names.
Yes, we are. A lot of developments from spring to fall within the same candidates and pools within the roster. There's evolution to some of these stories, and we're going to get to those in just a second. Today's episode brought to you by the Copper Drip. We'll tell you more about the Copper Drip and where they're going to be locally in Tallahassee a little bit later this hour. Head to thecopperdrip.com if you have any coffee needs. They'll deliver to you either bi-weekly or once a month. Ira, I was going to decide, let's play a little tennis here, or pickleball. Excuse me. Let's play a little pickleball here. Let's dink and smash and whatever we need to do back and forth. Topics that you find to be important, I find to be important through the series of interviews that we've partaken in and the observations and the talking points. I'll let you start. What is one of it doesn't have to be like the number one most important thing, but what's something that has definitely caught your ear or your eye to this point in camp?
I don't want to go with just a person. I think I would rather go with a bigger picture, but considering I just got out of not too long ago, a press conference with Tony White and got to hear him talk about Jason Lopez, I think I'm going to go with Jason Lopez. I don't know if he was on your list or not, or part of a subset.
He's definitely, so I put some scrimmage takeaways last night on the Tribal Council for Warchant members. More on that in a minute, too. Jason Lopez, you could just put it almost in ink that every day he's going to get shouted out by somebody. It could be a position coach, could be Norvell, could be an opponent, could be a teammate on the offensive side of the ball. Jason Lopez, Ira, ever since he got off the basketball court and put on football cleats, it seems like he's been synonymous with best performers of the day from wherever you were getting our interviews from.
Yeah, and we knew he's been productive. I mean, throughout the spring, as you said, once he made the move from football, he actually missed the first week of spring camp while he was still with the basketball team, and then he comes over and really within a couple days started making plays. And so that was the first thing you're hearing is, okay, this kid's making plays out there in practice, and it's like, okay, well, that's good to hear, but you don't really know what that means exactly in terms of. Maybe is he working with the threes? Is he going up against other backups and, he's ahead of those guys? That's what happens a lot of times when you get the spring superstars that don't end up being fall superstars. A lot of times is maybe they're a third teamer torching another third teamer. But when they move up on the depth chart, they have a tougher time, like maybe a pitcher in single A or double A that as they move up to the major leagues, they don't have the same success. And but Jason Lopez has carried it over to preseason camp. And now I don't think he's necessarily with the ones, not very often. The big play he had in the scrimmage, Tuesday night was a pass from Kevin Sperry, who's not the starting quarterback. So now he may be getting some run with the first team offense, but also a lot with the second team offense. So I'm not saying he's necessarily going to be one of your top 2 or 3 receivers, but hearing Tony White talk about him in his press conference on Wednesday it took it to a different level for me. Because Corey asked Tony White basically like, what is it about him that has allowed him to have this success so quickly? And Tony White's like, well, sometimes when you're the best athlete on the field, like that's just what it is. And it's like, okay. And, and he just talked about how twitchy he is, how, instinctive he is in terms of like finding, spots in the defense, running his routes. Yeah, man. I mean, that's kind of what you're looking for. When you think about some of the players that Florida State's had in the last 2 or 3 years that didn't materialize, some of the wide receivers, maybe even some of the backs who look the part, but were not all that productive. And sometimes it is, man. There's a intrinsic ability that some athletes have to make plays that goes beyond your height, your weight, your measurements. And it sounds like Jason Lopez is one of those guys where, yes, he was very productive in high school, but that wasn't necessarily just a product of the system. He seems to be a guy that, man, he's just kind of got that athletic ability that, that doesn't need 2 or 3 years in a system. Like, that's something that stands out. It sounds like it stands out immediately.
And it's been a through line since spring camp. We've heard his name mentioned in summer workouts and now obviously in fall camp. You're right. He was with the twos last night. There was a shot play from Sperry to Jason Lopez. I wouldn't be surprised if by the time this video comes out, maybe there's, a social media video from Florida State, because they've described who's on both ends of it, Kevin Sperry to Jason Lopez. But I'll tell you, Ira, it's Mike Norvell from the word go was very happy with Jason Lopez. Tim Harris was asked about him today, and he beams like he's talking about his favorite child. Like, he's just telling you about life's troubles, and you're sitting down catching up with a friend, and like, well, how's Jimmy doing? He's, oh, well, Jimmy. Jimmy is just, he's great. He's doing great. Yeah. That's the way that Tim Harris was talking about him. When we talked to, from the Jeff Cameron show, Jabril Rawls in ACC kickoff, he's like, well, that guy's different. Just so you all know, that dude is different. So you're getting respect from all across the board. Like, Jabril Rawls doesn't owe Jason Lopez anything to pump up his brand, and yet you have defensive minds saying that this guy is a big performer and somebody who is going to be important this season at minimum, Ira, as a rotational receiver, and it sounds like as a punt returner as well for Florida State.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, and as you mentioned with Jabril Rawls, same thing with Tony White. Tony said that, after practice, he'll go over to him and be like, hey, man, why don't you come do that on defense? It's the normal banner you hear about after a practice sometimes from coaches and players. But with a freshman, I just think that there's something there, man, the respect. And that interview you talked about with Jeff when he was interviewing Jabril Rawls, I think it might have been the first or second name he mentioned. And he's like, the freshman. And when he said the freshman, I thought he was going to say, Jason Lopez, Devin Carter. I thought he meant the plural freshman. And it was just like the freshman. No, that meant Jason Lopez, as if he's kind of separated himself. And it's, he'll definitely be a punt return guy. And you just, if you're a play caller, Mike Norvell fancies himself a play caller, an offense built for playmakers. Man, you got to figure out ways to get that guy the ball. If he is, I'm not saying he is the best athlete on the field the way Tony White described him, but if he's in that conversation, it's just another weapon that you can move around and try to find out. And because I think Tony White said it was either Tim Harris or Tony White. One of them talked about not just making the shot plays, but also, you get him the ball in space and he can make 2 or 3 guys miss.
Yeah, that's critical, and I think one of the great things for Florida State fans in this situation, a lot of times you hear about a freshman and there's a buzzy name. Like last year was Boggs, right? I mean, Boggs got a lot of run in spring. I mean, Gus Malzahn couldn't stop talking about him. Well, that you have a week 0 opponent like New Mexico State gives you the opportunity to perhaps see him right out the gate, rather than if you started with a couple of very difficult games and people are saying, well, where's Jason Lopez? I thought he was going to be a part of the rotation. He might earn more reps because it's not only about scrimmages for Florida State in fall camp. You get a tune-up game, and that you can garner even more trust from the coaches if you perform in that setting ahead of a game like SMU on a Monday night.
And just to clarify on Boggs, because I hear this a lot from people on social media or our message boards or on, different podcasts, whatever. Yeah, we heard this about Boggs last year. Well, Boggs he started the Alabama game.
Yep.
I mean, as a true freshman, he started the Alabama game. They expected him to be a guy. He got banged up, and he had a couple different injuries throughout that season. That's probably part of being, a freshman trying to play college football at this level. Maybe it was some fluke things, whatever it was, but it's not like they talked him up and had no plans for him. He ended up starting that game. So I think the fact that you're talking up Jason Lopez the way they are says that he's going to be a big part of it too.
So the first thing that I'll bring up, I don't know that it's my number one deal, but it resonated with me today coming out of these press conferences from the coordinators. Ira, it's that Chris Jones is being talked about a lot, and I think that's a huge deal. When he was brought in out of the transfer portal with the numbers he has amassed in college football in terms of tackles, being around the ball, being one of the highest ranked linebackers in the portal this last cycle, there was a lot of expectation around what Chris Jones' impact would be. And you didn't hear a lot about him in spring. And I think some of that might have been because he was banged up. And so maybe he wasn't getting as much time out there. But when Mike Norvell would speak about the linebackers, you'd hear a lot about Bayor, you'd hear a lot about Lavalle, but Chris Jones wasn't front and center the way that he's being talked about now in this last week. And that puts my mind at ease. Maybe I'm just speaking personally as a fan, like, oh, thank God. Okay, it sounds like they made a good, sound investment, because whether it's Chroma talking about Chris Jones and how physical he is and how he has to mind his P's and Q's technically when he goes heads up against Chroma, I think you might have asked that question in the press setting. Whether it's the coordinators speaking about what Chris brings to the table, I think it's nice to hear that somebody who was paid to be and brought in to be an anchor for this linebacker core is starting to sound very much in the minds of teammates and coaches like he's an anchor for the linebacker core.
Yeah, there's no question. And you let your mind wander. This is that time of year where you do kind of try to get excited about the season. You start thinking about the possibilities. The best thing about a guy like that is he can elevate other guys on the defense. And, I remember talking to Corey Simon. I think I've told this story before, when Corey Simon, longtime FSU great, defensive lineman, NFL great with the Eagles, he said his point was the linebacker's job is to make the defensive lineman right. His point was, man, a lot of stuff's going to happen in that defensive front. The things you didn't plan for based on what the offensive line does, based on what the play call is. Defensive lineman, it can get kind of murky up there. It's the linebacker's job to make them right and to figure out where they need to be and play off of the defensive line. I mean, I feel like these last couple of years, it's not just about athletic ability or desire or like wanting to put your nose in there. It's about knowing where to go. It's about like being able to see it and process, okay, where's the ball going? What's the offensive line doing? Where do my defensive linemen? And like, where do I have to be? And I think sometimes it's instinctual, sometimes it's from film study, but it seems like maybe he's one of those guys. And then he has the bad intentions because, you heard Tony White talk about he's trying to knock your soul out of you. And some other ways he described it. Now, the one caveat is I'm going to guess he's not great in pass coverage because his PFF numbers are not great in pass coverage. And because he, is not he wasn't the number one prospect in the country coming out of his East or Southern Miss last year. I mean, a lot of schools, SEC schools wanted him, but he wasn't like the number one player in the country that everybody was dying for. So I'm sure he's got some weaknesses. And that's the one thing my one hesitation with him is, can Tony White and this staff protect him a little bit when it gets into pass coverage? Because, FSU's linebackers the last couple of years have really gotten exploited in coverage.
It's a broken record, third and obvious, and it's a check down that beats you because they isolate the matchup running back against linebacker. And you're like, if it's not Georgia Tech, it's Pitt. I mean, those are two drastic examples with different defensive coordinators and different linebackers in the same setting where you're going, well, geez, how is that allowed to happen? Yeah, that's something that we're definitely going to be watching for. The good news is, I think, when you're talking to a player like Chroma, whose first name depends on whoever is speaking at the dais, we can't nail this down on Usman.
I'm convinced it's Usmani, but you're right. Mike Norvell just went with Usman yesterday.
Yeah.
And last year they put it out as Usman, I think. But I'm fairly well certain now it's Usmani.
Yeah, like, do we have a Link Jarrett Delamalure thing going on here where, like, everybody knows it's Delamalure, but he'll call him Delamalure? Maybe that's what's going on. But what Oos saw the linebacker core last year, and the way he talked about them this year, he's like, well, this is night and day, is the sense that he was trying to give. Like, they got some guys. They brought some real dudes in here is what it sounded like when he was interviewed earlier this week.
Yeah, that was a little uncomfortable, to be honest with you, because I'm like, hey, Oos, this is awesome. But Blake and Omar and those guys can watch this video too. Right. They can hop on Warchant TV. Yeah, but that was very very noticeable and appreciated. Oos is it's a cool dude, man. Like we saw that last year when he came in as a true freshman. I think the first time we spoke to him, the newcomer interview, he was a little quiet, but every time we talked to him after that, he was, you saw more and more of that personality. And I think, again, if he has the kind of year, because we're not talking about him, we're talking about Chris Jones, but Oos is a guy that people talk about the same way. I mean, you're talking about guys who maybe are a cut above just another guy. I feel like over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of Jags out there.
Yep.
these seem like guys that maybe are not Jags.
Yeah, you better bring it. Okay, so we'll snake draft it, and I'll choose that one, Chroma, as my second topic that we'll discuss right after I let you know that right now, everybody, come on, head over to warchant.com. Look at this bright and beautiful little graphic here and all the savings. If you're on the podcast, I'll describe to you what's going on here. A normal annual membership to warchant.com is $119.99 for the year. If you join right now, you're going to get 75% off your annual membership. You're also going to get a welcome gift of a $25 gift code to Garnet and Gold. That's right, gift code. So we'll send it to you via email. Just got to reach out to support@warchant.com, and you'll be able to use it from your home laptop, or you don't have to come get a physical card. That means you'll have savings of $114.99. It'll be $5 to join warchant.com for the year. Does it get simpler than that? Join us right now if you're a new customer for 75% off plus a $25 Garnet and Gold gift code. And you will amass savings of $114.99 when it's usually $120 to join us if you were just to do so normally throughout the year. Ira, it doesn't. I mean, that's the easiest thing in the world to sell. It's $5 out of your pocket in terms of what's actually going to happen in the first year. Be a part of this machine.
No, that's awesome. It really is a great deal. And it is for new subscribers. If you already have a subscription, we appreciate it. But this is for new subscribers. And listen, there's a lot of people right now who coming into this season weren't all that fired up about Florida State football after two straight bowl-less seasons, two straight seasons where FSU fell short of expectations. This year, we'll see how it plays out. But it's an annual subscription. So you'll be along for the ride, whatever this ride is. There's a lot of excitement right now. There's a lot of coverage we're doing in preseason camp. They're going over to Jacksonville for the next couple of days. We'll be covering that. Then the next 2 or 3 weeks of camp. Then the season, however it plays out, we'll be covering it. And then if there have to be changes made, we'll be covering that. And then you just go through the entire season. So a lot of content coming to warchant.com. Our staff grows and grows and grows. I mean, we've got 8 or 9 full-time people at warchant.com. So if you don't love Ira, or if you don't love Tom, you got Corey, you got Aslan, you got Matt, you got Jeff, you got Gene, you got the whole staff. If you haven't been a member of warchant.com in a long time or never, I'd highly advise you to give it a try for $5. I mean, what are we talking about?
There are some folks on the boards that don't like what it is that you throw down or I throw down, and that's okay. It's a marketplace of ideas. It's a bazaar on the Tribal Council. Join the largest FSU fan community today, 75% off. Usman Usmani Croma, Usman, whatever. 32 in red right now in practice because the offense wears garnet. He has been impressive. He's an impressive interview. I saw last week, I know Aslan caught the video. I caught the video as well of him flipping over the sled when they were going through the running back blocking drills. And Cam Martin says, okay, flip it, break it. Go ahead, break the damn thing. Florida State's got it. Make them pay and buy a new one. He has been starting to live up to the billing in his own way. It's not that he didn't have a good and productive year in his freshman season. He did have a productive year. Take a look at the stats. But it sounds like he's coming into his own. And the way the coaching staff is speaking about Chroma, Ira, is that if he's not the featured back every week, he's going to be one of the top 2 backs most every week. I think that's the fair expectation right now. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think he's the guy. And I was talking to somebody in the program back in the spring, and they were, they like Trey Wisner, but they were basically saying, the way Sam Singleton's coming on, Wisner, I mean, is he our third back? Is he a second back? Like they weren't sure, but they kind of felt pretty strongly that was going to end up being the guy. And, I know a lot of FSU fans that maybe if you're watching this and you haven't paid close attention to maybe the last 6 months, or if you just kind of casually watched last season, maybe you didn't really look at the whole context of that. But I think it's really important, and something we don't talk about enough, I think, is the fact that Us came in last summer. He didn't have a spring like a lot of early enrollees have. A lot of the freshmen that come in, Jason Lopez, who we're talking about, came in last spring. Javen Boggs came in last spring. Usmani Croma came in last summer, which basically means, he had a month or so on campus learning his way around. And then, okay, now you're in football practice and learn this offense and go play on Saturdays. So when you look at it from that standpoint, dude ran for over 400 yards,
Yep.
had a really impressive yards per carry average. The usage was a little strange. There's some games where Gus either just forgot he was on the team or just didn't feel like he could use him, whatever it was. But he had a lot of impressive runs and he didn't really know what he was doing. And I think pass protection was probably a concern. But now he's been in the system for a full year now. He's probably got all that under control now. And now when he goes on the field, there's a confidence about him. So, I mean, I think you're going to see the guy that FSU fans thought they were getting when he spurned Georgia right before the signing period, signed with Florida State. And yeah, man, everything I hear about him is impressive. Like it's not like you hear kind of lukewarm praise here and this person likes him. I mean, everybody that talks about Oos raves about Oos.
It's 550 yards essentially last year, 80 touches as a true freshman. I think most would take that anyway,
yes.
But it felt like there were many yards left out on the table. You're right with the usage and how that worked. And that's something that we'll be watching this season very closely. I know Tim Harris has said they'll go with the hot hand with the running back room. Whether that's true or not, I think that keeps everybody engaged.
Right.
But it sounds like before Trey Wisner, who was held out of the scrimmage on Tuesday night, it sounds like from what Tim Harris said, night and day from spring performance to fall performance. And fall camp so far, Wisner has caught the guy's eye and the coach's eye. And this is a running back room that is, I think, unequivocally very, very good. I don't think it's Florida State right now good. I don't think it's ACC good. I think this is a really good room where they have some real options because Sam Singleton, the man who's lost in the shuffle, I saw it in Gene Williams' observations from practice last Friday. I felt the same way. He just looks like a complete back. The way he's put together, Ira, he looks like he can bruise. He looks like he can run away from you. The balance, I mean, he's not a scat guy, and he's not a slow-footed guy either. Like Sam Singleton could very well be the most complete back because I don't know that Oos is going to be running away from people, but Sam sure could. It's going to be interesting to watch how his role develops this year.
Yeah, I think he's one of the players I really want to see in a game situation because you're right. Physically, he just looks different. I mean, we knew he had the speed. He had a 90-something yard kickoff return for a touchdown. He was a speed guy in high school. He had some long runs when he was given opportunities where guys were not chasing him down. So you knew the speed was there, but you look at him now physically and he looks completely different. I mean, he looks jacked. So you add that with that and, just the understanding of the offense. He's been in the system now. He's been on college now for 3 or 4 years. There's a lot to like here. And apparently in practices, he's been real productive. So he's a guy I just want to see. Like, I want to see, is he an every down back? I mean, he looks physically like it. I want to see it. Like, does he move piles? Is he a guy that can get through traffic? And get the extra 2 or 3 yards here and there. I really want to see. I'm very intrigued by what Sam Singleton is.
So we've hit on receiver, we've hit on linebacker and running back. It doesn't mean we can't hit on another one of players, a player from one of those positions, I should say. Is what's next on your list that you've learned this week or that you've remarked and said, interesting. Let's see how that develops between now and the first game of the year.
I don't want to keep talking too much about offensive guys, but I'm preemptively telling you to roll your eyes if you want to. But there's a lot of good buzz about Ashton Daniels right now. Now we'll see what it translates to. But I would say that I didn't hear I feel like I'm hearing more positive things about Ashton Daniels right now than I did about Tommy Castellanos last year. And then I did about DJ Uyunglele, a different tough name. And why I say that is those guys maybe would have a moment here or there, but a lot of people would bring up the concerns and like, okay, we're gonna have to coach around this. We're gonna have to make sure Tommy would have times where he would maybe throw interceptions or, the not see things in the offense, in the passing game, things like that. He also would make some amazing plays. There would be like highs and lows. With DJ, it felt like it was the feeling I always had was like, as long as we can run the football, like DJ can be okay. He's not going to be anybody. He's not going to make anybody else better around him. He's not going to like throw receivers open and be this guy you can build an offense around. But if we can run the football, he's going to be okay. Ashton Daniels is getting some really positive reviews, at least things I'm hearing. And Matt's hearing and you guys may be hearing as well. But I mean, just there's an excitement about the way he's playing. And then when you ask coaches and teammates, their body language tells you the same story. So I'll see. We'll see. And we're all going to see this together. But I expected the conversation about Ashton Daniels, because it was in the spring. It was very tempered. And I expected the talking points to be more like, yeah, he'll be okay, or he might be okay. But there's some people, I mean, I'm not saying he's perfect, but like people are excited about his athletic ability and people are excited about some of the plays he is making more than I am hearing the concerns. So, we'll see. Again, I'm not putting my chips in with Ashton Daniels, but I will say that that's something that caught my attention because it's something I didn't really expect in preseason camp.
Just in doing the exercise of looking at every one of his snaps, the good of Ashton Daniels is legitimately good. It's not, well, it's pretty good, or you can work with that. It's like, no, that's going to work. And he has his limitations.
Right.
The deep ball being one of them. We all understand that, at least consistently throwing it. If you anticipate the deep ball, then I think he's got enough strength to get it out there. But he's also not bad throwing things like bench routes outside the numbers, and he's got enough zip on his arm to get it there to where it's not in danger of being picked off. He's got decent pocket presence. He's very elusive in the pocket and also good at extending plays. I mean, there are traits there. Like I know that a lot of FSU fans immediately shut down on the idea of Ashton Daniels, and I know that's what you're speaking to. About roll your eyes, everybody. The good of him is good. The things that I'll be looking for this year, and Norvell touched on it a little bit in his remarks after the scrimmage. Sometimes it's about finding that check down or that outlet a little bit quicker. Like that's something that at Auburn you could see out of Ashton Daniels, which was, hey man, if you really thought this was open, I love you. It's not there. Come off it, and let's move to the next thing. It's those little details that you want to see. But he took care of the football last year. The interceptions he threw were a Hail Mary and then a drop pass, the likes of which Florida State and SMU. If you watched that game 2 years ago on the road, you'd understand what we're talking about. Like that Morlock play in the beginning of the second half. You're just like, oh my goodness gracious. Does it mean he didn't throw? He never threw dangerous passes? No, he certainly threw a couple where you go, yikes, what the hell are you thinking? But he's not a total project. I think they just need to make sure that they play from in front, and I don't mean on the scoreboard necessarily. I just mean down in distance. All right, it's a legitimate weapon with his legs too. This is not something like, well, if things break down, he can get you 6 yards. Like, no, he can get you 15 or 20 if the defense is caught napping. He's a potential.
That's the thing. Right, and that's the thing that I think we have had a hard time kind of tapping into in terms of illustrating for people, because some of the questions have been asked about how are you going to be able to incorporate him into the running game, that type of thing, and for whatever reason the answer is we just haven't gotten great stuff until Tim Harris. I thought Tim Harris was pretty enlightening when we talked to him this week, and he said, I asked about, are you making the quarterbacks live or not? And he's like, no, we're not making them live, but we still are running. We're running a zone read. We're running QB power. Like, so it's in their offense for a reason. Like that's going to be something that they really count on. And again, I like the fact that he's got some size to go along with it. I probably, I knew the ball. I knew he had good rushing numbers overall, especially a couple of years ago at Stanford. But I don't think I appreciated that, how athletic he really is. And again, you combine the size, and now that's a weapon to go with what we think is going to be a really good backfield. And again, that takes so much pressure off of the offensive line. If you don't have to block everybody, it just changes the math. We all know that if your quarterback is a threat, is a runner. And so, yeah, that's something that, again, I went in kind of, to your point, I kind of went into camp wanting to hear that he's not costing them plays. He's not costing them drives. He's not making huge mistakes. And I'm hearing more about the big plays he's making and the positive plays he's making and helping the offense go. That, again, has me cautiously optimistic. I'm not running to Vegas, but or to any of the what do we call it? Who's our On3 partner?
Polymarket. We're a partner of Polymarket. So you could be trading. You could be trading on this right now.
I'm not running to the Polymarket just yet, but I am intrigued.
I would totally agree. Like, for example, last year, if you watch, I know that the popular talking point is the Vandy game, he's awesome, the Alabama game, he's awesome. I don't think he was awesome in the Alabama game. I think he was awesome in the Vandy game. And oddly enough, the Kentucky performance where he's 14 to 28 or 14 to 29, I thought he did yeoman's work that night because you got a 17-year-old center starting in an SEC game. There's immediate pressure. He was hurried 14 times.
Man, that
14.
was that poor center. Oh my goodness.
He's under, but it's.
I feel like we could have helped him out a little bit more too. But anyway,
I think so. I think Hugh Freeze was ready to be fired. I think is what was going on that night, and so he handled that beautifully. I mean, by getting rid of the ball or avoiding the first rusher, throwing it out of bounds, and you live to fight another down. Like little traits like that don't kill drives. I think that's going to be as important as a 15-yard corner route that's perfectly placed that continues to move the chains on a first down. Like he's going to have to demonstrate these little things along the way. He's going to need an offensive line in front of him to hold up, and that will be my next topic here is the trenches in general. We love talking trenches, you and I do. When Mike Norvell spoke last night about Nate Paps, he says, well, he's extremely versatile. You can play him at tackle or guard. Now we're playing him mostly at guard. I thought, uh-oh. I thought we were done with the Nate Paps is playing tackle thing. It was only if there was a need that Nate would play on the right side of tackle. My antennae are up. I'm like Ira. I'm not telling you to run to the bank and say that they've got a problem on the right side of the offensive line, but I'll tell you, Ira, I didn't love to hear that Nate Paps' versatility was brought up last night when they're trying like the dickens to make sure that he plays in the interior and not out there at right tackle. So I'm watching that. I'm going to be listening very carefully for how scrimmage number 2 goes on Sunday and Herb Hand's comments later in camp when we get him. That's going to be an interesting development because all this talk about Ashton is good, but he will need time, and that offensive line will need to perform this fall. And anything you think about the offensive line, what you've heard so far?
yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I think it's hard to get too excited about what people tell you about the offensive line during the summer because by nature, they're not hitting. So there's a lot of things you can do. There's a lot of drills that you can work on. There's a lot of on air. There's a lot of different things that they can do, but it's different when there's a 280 pound or the other side of you, really coming at you in full pads. And so, probably the biggest question mark on this offensive line going into the offseason was at right tackle. Chimdia Nwawu, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, transferred in from Stephen F. Austin. He played a lot there, but it's a little bit lower level of competition. And, PFF numbers were not great in the first place. So that was kind of, and then in the spring, it sounded like there were some mixed results. We weren't hearing like, oh, yeah, this guy's a day one starter. There's questions about whether or not he could be the guy. And then you go into preseason camp, and Herb Hand was pretty complimentary of him and the summer he had, the offseason he had. And then you also have Jonathan Daniels is a candidate there as well. But that's a super important position. I mean, they're all important, but that's a super important position. And until you actually see it in full pads in practice with real live pass rushers and real life defensive linemen, it's kind of hard to evaluate. So the fact that they're maybe changing their mindset a little bit, and we don't know for sure, it may be just a case-by-case basis, it does make you think that may be a road that they at least feel like they need to prepare for. Whether it's a cross-training situation or whether it's going to be a move there, we'll see. But yeah, man, it's going to make your line weaker if you have to do that because Paps, you'd feel much better if you had that solution at right tackle. You didn't have to put Nate Paps there. You could leave him at right guard. You feel really good about that offensive line because you have a guy with 37 starts in Power 4 football at left tackle. You've got a center that's started in the Big Ten and the SEC. You've got a right guard who would have 30, 40 starts in college football in Nate Paps. And then you'd have, maybe Andre Otto, if he's the guy at left guard, is a guy that's been in the program for 4 years, big, strong dude. You'd feel good about the 5. If you have to move Paps around, yeah, it feels like that's something that you were, at the very least, hoping you didn't have to do.
It's been unfortunately, it's been a broken record talking point from the spring since Nate was talking about that he was working mostly at guard, specifically right guard. And then Herb Hand confirmed it. As positive as he was in the coach's luncheon, he said, well, if we have to move Nate, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's like, well, that's not great. Okay, so they're really trying for Daniels or Chimdia to win the job at right tackle. The guy to watch for me is actually Braden Welsh Joyner now is his name as it's listed in the programs or on Seminoles.com, the official roster. But he was Mike Norvell singled him out first and foremost as a good offensive line performer in scrimmage number 1. I thought that was important to hear because his PFF stuff from Purdue and Auburn isn't so hot. It's inconsistent. So it's nice to hear that they feel as though they might have an anchor there. He also is working at guard a little bit or was cross-training at guard a little bit, according to Herb Hand. And Sandman Thompson is battling Welsh Joyner, for the center's job. I just wonder if Sandman might not be the guy who benefits the most here if Nate Pabst has to flex out and play right tackle. And then maybe you take the better fit at guard between the guys that are battling a center right now, and that's how you stack your 5 left to right. Again, it's so early. I know that I'm getting into the weeds. I can feel that, Ira, but I mean, they did have a scrimmage. They decided to hold a scrimmage really early in camp, and that's when some of these decisions are made. The good news, once again, is that you at least have a week 0 game to put these guys out there on the field and trial and error it a little bit before you play SMU on Monday night and Labor Day.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, you've got some options. You don't have unlimited options, but you do have a couple of options. You got some things you could do so where you're not just throwing up your hands and having to play somebody that has no business being out there. So they do have some options, and he's got a few more weeks. They have a scrimmage coming up next week, and then even after that, they'll still have a couple weeks practice, and then you have the New Mexico State game before you have to play SMU.
I wonder if there's going to be, just getting into the schedule very quickly. Yes, Sunday night. So they're in Jacksonville for a few days, starting Thursday for the first practice in Jacksonville. They have a scrimmage on Sunday, and Mike Norvell speaks Sunday night. You flash forward a couple of weeks, there's this random day, Ira, between off days where both coordinators talk to the media. I wonder if they're not going to hold some sort of unofficial scrimmage there for maybe position battles or the younger players. But I think they might not be done with just 2 simple scrimmages, especially because another injury note last night, quarterback Malachi Marshall was not available because of some minor-ish injury. But listening to Mike Norvell, Ira, it doesn't sound like Marshall is a definite to be available for scrimmage 2. I think they still want to evaluate some people in live situations here before camp is out if they can't go on Sunday.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they had a third one. In fact, a lot of times, they'll do like that dress rehearsal scrimmage before the season starts, where it's basically just kind of getting everybody into the mindset of, okay, this is a real game now. We're coming out of the tunnel. We're working on what we do during timeouts. We're working on all those things. And it is a lot of times the younger guys play more than the older guys because it is so close to the season. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if there was another scrimmage. And then, when you talk about, just kind of these guys in the competition, I mean, I think there's some young guys. There's a lot of young guys that are going to play. I mean, especially now that you don't have the redshirt rule anymore. I mean, we've been saying now for the last few years, because of the transfer portal and because of the fluid rosters, that the idea of redshirting guys and keeping them to only 4 games because you're trying to preserve that year of eligibility, like it felt like something that was a noble thing to do for the player's benefit. But the reality was, it's like, man, that kid's, he may not even be here next year. He may be somewhere else 2 years from now. So who are you preserving that red shirt for? But now with the 5 for 5, I think you go into a season with a whole different mindset, because there's dudes who may not be able to help you right now or may not be in your plans right now, but you need to get them ready because you may need them later in the year, whether because of attrition or because they've developed. So I do think I would not be surprised at all if there's another scrimmage maybe to look at some of those younger guys.
So I've got my things that I wanted to talk about out there with the O-line, the running backs, and then Chris Jones. Is there something else that we're missing right now, or something maybe that even at moving the ball forward that you're looking to hear from scrimmage number 2 that maybe Mike didn't address from scrimmage number 1? Big topics that we've learned so far during camp.
Yeah, the other big thing that's kind of I feel like is a big thing, and I feel like I'm eager to see it. I just want to see it because I am excited about what I've heard for the last 7 months now, at least 5-6 months about the safety group. Because I'm super impressed by Mekhi Jones, who transferred in from Duke, just talking to him and then looking at the way he played last year at Duke, the way he kind of forced his way into the lineup as a true freshman. I'm real impressed by him. Ashlyn Barker, the way he's developed and adapted to that rover role. I mean, he's just drawing rave reviews. And then I really CJ Richard is intriguing. I knew he had a good year at Illinois State. I didn't realize the size he has. I mean, he is a big dude. And so I'm just really intrigued by that safety group. That to me, I'm excited about the linebackers, curious about the defensive line, but I'm really excited also about the safety group. And I just want to see what it looks like. I know what Jabril Rawls looks like at corner. I feel like I have a pretty good idea of Quindarius Jones, what he's going to look like. But I do want to see those safeties, in action. The biggest question I think I have right now, and it's one we're not going to get an answer to probably until the season starts, is, just special teams. And it's not it's just hard to quantify. You have a new place kicker, a new punter. There seems to be some excitement about the return guys. Certainly Jason Lopez is a punt returner. And also, you got Sam Singleton back and Mekhi Danzy as kick returners. A lot of speed there. But we don't know what these kickers look like, and we don't know what the punter looks like. Or if there's multiple punters they're looking at. Daniel Hughes is the big name guy that transferred in from New Mexico. But they have a couple walk-ons that are getting opportunities as well. And then, in place kicker, you've got a couple guys competing there. And so, again, I'm not expecting any of them to be Ryan Fitzgerald in his final year, or to be, Graham Gano or any of the greats that have kicked at FSU. But are they just good? Are they good enough? Because last year, Jake Weinberg was a disaster as that year went on, and it became a huge problem.
It was. And look, if you're trying to improve in a lot of 50-50 settings from 5-7 to 8-4, sometimes it's about special teams, and it could be the big difference. I mean, we lamented the return game. I'm glad to hear that Mike Norvell says they're working very hard on the punt return game first and foremost. Thank God that the squirt guns are gone. I can't imagine that.
You don't think he left it behind? You don't think?
I would hope not. I mean, unless they brought in George Whitfield to be the new special teams coordinator, and he's got mops and brooms and pool noodles and all kinds of stuff. Like, please. There was no more afraid group in the country than Florida State's punt returners of the ball. Like, it was just, and I know you had to hear it in the press box from Corey over and over again, so I apologize for you hearing that. But he's not wrong. Like, it was just otherworldly, and that has to be better. But you're right, Ira, the kicking game is incredibly important. I did actually talk to Daniel Hughes, because he's everywhere. He was at the radio studios one day. Like, he's literally everywhere in Tallahassee.
He was in your radio studio?
He was on the next show. He was going to do the next show,
okay.
93.3. And I was like, hey, so what's the goal this year for the net? Like, what? Because, Jimbo used to be net 40, and he's like, fine, I don't care how you get it. Give me a net 40, and I'm good to go. And he's like, well, I netted 42 or 43 last year, so the goal is actually to be closer to 50 this year. I'm like, well, Godspeed, man. Doesn't everybody want that?
Yeah.
But if he nets 42 or 43 for the year, then the punting game is going to be just fine. But who the hell knows? It's 3rd and 4 from the opponent's 26. Are you cool with calling a run there, or are you calling 2 plays because you don't trust your kicker? That's how Florida State lost to NC State a few years back in the early Ryan Fitzgerald days. Was that a Friday night game or a Thursday night game on the road? Yeah, that game changed fundamentally because they didn't trust their kicker. You don't want to be in that position again this year, or like you were with Weinberg at points.
Yeah, and they brought in 2 guys, Gabe Panikowski, who was at Oklahoma State last year but didn't actually kick for them. He basically redshirted last year, but he had been good before. The year before, he was at a smaller school and went 15 for 15. And then the other guy, Connor McNanamy, I can't pronounce it.
McNanamy, yep. Gotcha.
Yeah, from Ireland, the guy that got into some trouble down South Florida for spring break. He's back on the team. He's in good standing. He's there as well. I think he's probably more of a kickoff guy, but maybe the long field goal guy. We'll see how it all plays out. But again, it's just going to be totally sight unseen. I mean, we just have no idea. I mean, the Weinberg kid we saw in practice the year before when we were able to watch practice. So like we went into last year knowing, okay, we know he's got a big leg. We've seen that in practice. He was at Florida State the year before, just didn't kick. And so we saw him in practice. We saw the leg. We knew about Mac Chimeno because he had been, even though he's Alex Mastromanno's backup, he had been in the program for 3 years. So we knew what he was. We had seen him practice a million times. This just feels so blind because I've never seen any of these guys kick in a game situation. So that part of it, I'm not saying it's a panic, but I just don't know anything about what to expect from the kickers and the punters.
For many years there, from Gano to Hopkins to Aguayo. If they're lining up from 38 or 41, Ira in the press box, you go get a refill, you go get the food you need, you go use the restroom. That's good. They're going to TV timeout, no problem. This year, from 41, SMU game, everybody's just going to be leaning forward and lock the hell in. Because we can't have nice things and just talk about football, there's always something else in college sports. We've already kind of touched on one with the 5-for-5 ruling because of a judge ruling that came out of Colorado. We're going to talk a little bit about the Protect College Sports Act in just a moment. But today's sponsor, first of all, let's smile before we frown. It's the Copper Drip in Tallahassee. The CopperDrip.com is available to anybody who is in the footprint of this here program. So if you're watching it on YouTube, if you're watching it on Facebook, or you're listening on the podcast, you can head to the CopperDrip.com and get locally made, with wonderful ingredients, I might add, Tallahassee-based coffee shipped anywhere you live, either every couple of weeks or once a month, from a local business that would love your support and loves us here at Warchant.com. The Copper Drip has multiple wings to the enterprise, Ira. They're going to be all about town. If you're in Tallahassee and you're going to be in the downtown market on Saturday morning this week, well, then stop by. You'll see their truck. They've got a beautiful setup now. There's also, as we have on the screen, now bottled cold brew lattes available on demand from the Copper Drip. You can see the expansion of this vision as it's going along. So they've got the local wing where they're going to be all over Tallahassee and North Florida. Then they've got the website where if you want better coffee than you're drinking right now, go to thecopperdrip.com.
Yeah, they're just really good people. Brandon and Sierra are awesome. This is kind of their baby. They each had their own careers. Brandon's a firefighter in Tallahassee. Sierra has been in the business world. She is very accomplished in the business world, but this is their passion project, is the Copper Drip and this coffee operation. And so they're very serious about how they source the beans. They talk at great length about ethically sourcing the beans that they use. Then they roast them here in their own operation. They're not having someone else do it for them. They have their own. They've invested in a huge roasting machine, so they do all that here for the quality control. And then, as you said, the subscription service is awesome. We actually have it at the house, not as part of the sponsorship. We just do it. Like Kim should get the commission on this one, because we stopped at the Copper Drip when we saw them out at one of their locations, and she fell in love with them. We do the subscription order. In fact, the other day when the subscription came in, when we got the bag at the house of the new beans, Kim's like, "Is Copper Drip going to sponsor you guys this year?" And I was like, "Yes, of course." And she's like, "Okay, well, I just got a new bag in." So she was excited about that. And they've got a bunch of different varieties. You can go to the website, information about the different varieties of coffees that they produce and that they sell. And as you said, if you get a chance to see them around town, when they are around Tallahassee, always on Saturdays, it seems like they go to that farmer's market type thing down in downtown Tallahassee. They're just cool people. Brandon's a huge Nole. And, just tell them you heard about them on Warchant and the Smash.
Use code MSMASH15 at thecopperdrip.com for a discount as well. Thank you for supporting those who support us in the Copper Drip. Outstanding folks. They've been around for a long time now. Big supporters of the Smash and what we do at Warchant. So the Protect College Sports Act. All right, Ira. Over the weekend, it had its like Undertaker coming out of the casket moment, right? This thing was dead. It was not going to make it in time. Cloture, votes, procedures, the United States Senate floor, none of that was going to happen for the Protect College Sports Act, because they've got a recess coming up at the end of the week as we sit here tonight on Wednesday, and it just wasn't important enough. And
because there were some terms in it that the SEC and the Big Ten weren't okay with.
Correct. It did not have the support of the Big Ten or the SEC. Then, flash forward, this 5-for-5 ruling comes out, right? And there's a judge ruling in Colorado about eligibility, and there might be some more implications that come along with that. And it just seemed to help stoke the power conferences in the right direction based upon just continued examples of the NCAA's wishes being struck down, or the college sports games wishes being struck down. And so concern grew higher. It's Saturday night. It's late. Next thing you know, there are statements from the Big Ten and the SEC saying the latest draft is really good. We support the Protect College Sports Act, and we lend our support to it, as, of course, did the Big 12 and the ACC. So at that point, now it sounds like you've got unanimous support amongst the power conferences, maybe not the member institutions within, but at least the majority within those conferences. And it goes to a place from dead and buried to maybe it's going to happen. Flash forward here to Wednesday night. It still seems highly unlikely, Ira, that this thing is going to get voted on before there's the August recess for the United States Senate. Where do things stand for you right now? And I know that you've got a piece coming up on warchant.com to that effect about where Florida State is in this whole equation. We've got a quote that we're going to pull up for you in just a minute. But where do you stand on this issue? Because it's really dense. We've had to do some litigating here on Warchant TV over the last couple of years. This is extremely dense because it gets into the legal ramifications and civics as well.
Yeah, man, it's not just dense because the material is hard to sift through. It's dense because nobody really knows like what the motives are and how serious anybody is about this actually happening and what it would mean if it does happen. The fact that it was resuscitated. I mean, again, we're not in the meeting rooms. We don't know exactly what's happening behind the scenes, but it feels like, and it felt like to me, just based on the way politics works in general and the way our country, the leaders in our country have operated in recent years, it felt like to me that maybe some people at Washington went back to these schools and said, "Hey, you asked us to support this thing. You asked us to intervene. You asked us to help." And Florida State's one of the schools that did that. Like Michael Alford, Peter Collins, Richard McCullough, their lobbyists, like they've been working for the last 2 years, 3 years maybe, behind the scenes, getting people to petition Congress to do something, to save the NCAA, to save college sports, because everything's just run amok. And so you have, Ted Cruz and these other politicians that feel like they've done the work and their staffs have done the work and they put together proposals and they've changed them and, made some alterations and they've come up with what they've come up with. And then the SEC and the Big Ten said, nope, we're not interested. We don't think it works. We're not supporting it. It felt like to me, like maybe there were some people in Washington who were like, hey, like, what do we have to do to make this work to get your support? Because we wasted time on this. Like, what do we have to do? And then they did make some changes. They took out the stuff about, the revenue sharing from television, pooling the television revenue. They made some changes there, some other accommodations, and they got the Big Ten and the SEC on board. ACC was pretty much on board, said, even though every school doesn't agree with it, like Florida State doesn't love it. And then in the Big 12, I think, they were supporting it as well. So now you have everybody kind of on board, but are they really on board because they think it's really going to happen? Or did they just say they're on board because they know it's probably not going to actually go through? Because of the reasons you mentioned. I mean, first of all, it's still a long shot whether or not it could get through the process for the Senate during this session before they go on recess. And then even if it does, everybody you talk to says very little chance of it getting through the House unless it's totally changed. So I don't know for sure if these conferences really are on board with it or if they were just like, okay, we'll save you the face by saying we are on board with it because we know this isn't going to happen. And then there's a whole nother level, which is, should we want this thing or not? Because at some point, it's not like it's going to go away forever. Like maybe at some point it does become more likely to become reality. Like I think we have to discuss whether or not this is something that, FSU fans and college football fans and college sports fans in general should really want.
Well, and this is the part where over the weekend I decided to put the old Schoolhouse Rock, I'm just a bill in the message boards because let's just say it did pass the Senate. To your point, now it's got to go to the House for debate. The House doesn't like it as is, from what I understand, so it's going to get redlined, revised. If at that point it even gets that far and it gets voted on and maybe passed, the Senate has to come back and take a look at it. And like this is during a midterm cycle, and they're about to go on a break for a month.
And to the point of the midterms, there's going to be elections this year,
right?
And so the constitution of the makeup of the House and the Senate may look very differently. So you have different people involved. Yeah, to your point.
Right. And I've seen national reporting say, well, then maybe during a lame duck Congress session where there are people who are outgoing, but they're not quite out of office yet, perhaps they'll vote. I mean, it sounds like pipe dream after pipe dream to me. But to be fair, I don't think concern is totally unwarranted because it was dead and buried last week and it's not quite so today. And so why, oh why, is the fear and consumption among Florida State fans surrounding this particular bill? Well, it's because of the top line items, which would be that the power conferences are capped at 19 members. And if you wanted to leave one power conference for another, you'd have to spend 5 years in the purgatory of independence to get from one place to the other. These are insane provisions. I don't even know why these conferences would want it. The power conferences, if they wanted to grab other people, they could grab other people. Like I would rather have that option before me, but that's not my call. It's one spot is open in the Big Ten at present. 3 spots are open in the SEC at present. If this was to pass, like if all of these hurdles were cleared and this thing became law, then Florida State is in a precarious position, Ira, because you don't have the Big Ten and the SEC, in theory, wrangling over Florida State. The Big Ten wouldn't come down just for one Florida team to maximize their count at 19. The SEC has already said there's redundancy in bringing in Florida State. They wouldn't feel the pressure to do so. And so the fear of the fan base would be you are locked into ACC revenue, even though it's better, even though you're making more from a success initiative or a ratings initiative. Lord knows the success initiative has gone to Miami, not to Florida State so far. You'd be locked into that as your fate for the foreseeable future, unless you're able to go independent with a bunch of other schools. I don't know what crazy scenario you'd have to draw up. So that's where I think the concern lies among the fan bases. Yeah, okay, maybe it's not dead and it's unlikely, but if it did happen, what does it mean for Florida State? Nothing good if those provisions were to survive revisions in the House and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think that, from talking to people at FSU, around FSU, people that are familiar with the situation, that's kind of the solace right now that FSU is taking. Now they're working behind the scenes. I mean, I do want to emphasize that. I mean, I think that they're the people, the power structure, the leadership of Florida State, and their friends, the lobbyists that are their friends, the people that are that have access to powerful people, are working to represent Florida State's interests and express these concerns. They actually had a meeting this week. You mentioned the quote from Peter Collins. I don't know if you want to bring it up now, but and if you want me to read it, or if you want to read it,
I can hammer it out real quick. So this is from Politico. Cite the source, and he says in a recent article, it might have come out today.
Yeah, it was from the Board of Governors, Florida Board of Governors, which oversees each school's Board of State University system. They had a task force meeting about college athletics. Peter Collins is part of it, and he was there and made this comment.
So he said, quote, "If I live in California for 30 years ago it was great, today not so great, and I want to move to Florida, the government says, sure, you can move to Florida, but you got to go to Cuba for 5 years. That makes no sense." And so obviously he's talking about the ACC would be California in this particular analogy. Florida would be the SEC, and Cuba would be independence. That is what he's trying to go for. I think it's funny, and I think it's nice to hear from a Florida State official saying, that's stupid. Why would you ever want 19-5? Ira, I would think if it ever passed, it got that far. I don't mean to step on what Florida State is doing, but I mean, how can you prohibit a university from trying to better itself monetarily through? I don't think that's, even if it's a law, I don't know that that's illegal. I think that would be challenged. But where do you stand on this?
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole thing here is it's not. There's so many different things about this that fascinate me, but also like I don't know how to process it, because to your point, like it doesn't feel like that this is something that should or will take place, and maybe it won't make through the process at all. But I also know that like assuming it's not going to happen isn't a good strategy. Like I don't want to hear, if I'm a Florida State fan, I don't want to hear that FSU is just saying, oh, well, there's no way that's going to get passed as written. Like something's going to happen, because that doesn't feel like a great plan. Like you can't control that. You're just hoping for the best, even if it's logical, even if that makes sense, which I think it does make sense. But, I do. One of the other parts of this whole thing is like, you wonder, okay, who's behind it? You brought this up earlier. Like where did we come up with this number of 19? Like, first of all, who wants a 19 team conference? Like, why did you come up with that number? And so, from a Big Ten standpoint, everybody assumes that that's going to be Notre Dame's spot, and Notre Dame at some point is going to come to their senses, and they want that spot. And maybe Notre Dame says, you know what? We've been an independent. Yeah, we played football in the ACC. but we've actually been an independent, so we should be able to get in right away. And then you have that discussion or battle, however that plays out. But then as far as the SEC schools go, like if they have 3 spots, who do they take? Florida State, I think Florida State officials for a long time have felt like they're going to have a seat at whatever the table is whenever that time comes. The whole concern was, can you get out of the ACC? Well, now through the lawsuit, the exit fee is going to come down, and at some point you're going to be able to buy your way out of the ACC. The question is, are you going to have a home? Are you going to have a place? And so now that's kind of caused everybody, this concern. But, at the same time, so that part of it is desperately concerning. At the same time, though, there is a lot in this act that I think most fans would want. We do want some constraints. We do want some sort of real salary cap. We do want the player transfer to get the antitrust exemption, so where you can't have players transferring every year. Like, you do want some of those things in place. You just don't like the whole package. And then even if the thing does go through, we still don't know how it's going to be enforced. Like, it's the salary cap that they're talking about. Okay, the federal government's behind it, but what does that actually mean? Is there going to be a bigger investigation force? What are the penalties going to be? So from that standpoint, it's like you're creating this. You've got this bill that's supposed to. It's going to kill it's going to check all these boxes you wanted to check off of, but we don't really know if it's going to work, and it's going to bring with it some other consequences that nobody really was asking for in the first place. So it's a mess, man. Like, it's to me, it just feels like a huge mess. But there is some people pushing. Clearly are some people with power pushing it, because, like you said, this time last week, it was dead on arrival.
I still think, bottom line here, I'll start on a concern index of 1 to 10. I'm at like a 2 or a 2.5. That this is going to cause Florida State a problem. It's not a 0. Where would you stand on it right now?
I'd probably put it at a 5. Okay. Just because I don't know I don't know what's motivating the Ted Cruzes and the people who breathe new life into this. Like, it was dead. It was dead. I mean, it wasn't like this was just Florida State people saying it was dead, or some media people saying it was dead. Everybody you talked to in the industry was convinced this was dead. And then all of a sudden it was not. Now, again, as I said earlier, was that just so some politicians could save face? Or is there really a push to try to make this happen? If there is, like, man, sometimes stuff gets pushed through. So that has me at least taking it seriously.
We will keep you abreast of all of these issues, the more fun ones like football camp, and the denser ones that make you wonder, why do I even like this sport anymore? Like congressional action and the Senate, and perhaps if it makes it that far to the House, legal coverage of the Protect College Sports Act. It's all available right now, warchant.com. Discussions are raging in the Tribal Council about all these topics. Make sure to head over to warchant.com. Sign up if you're a new customer. Now is the time. This is one of my favorite specials. We've done the dollar deal when we first did the move over to On3. 75% off plus 25 bones to Garnet and Gold. And may I mention something else, everybody? Beyond the excellent work and the insights that you'll read at warchant.com, one Gene Williams has negotiated with Garnet and Gold that if you are a Warchant subscriber, you are already going to get, for the term of your membership, a 10% discount on all Garnet and Gold purchases. That sounds pretty good, right? Because, gear is expensive, so 10% goes a long way. Now it is 15%. You got a 5% bump. We are moving with the times. Things are more expensive. Discounts are greater. There you go. 15% off all purchases at Garnet and Gold after you get your $25 gift card. So this membership, quite literally, if you have a Nole on your Christmas list or 2 of them, Ira, it pays for itself. It's a wonderful deal to jump on right now.
Yeah, and people that have been subscribers in the past know this, but for those of you who haven't, and you're going to jump in when you take advantage of this offer, they also do special Warchant days at Garnet and Gold where there's extra incentives sometimes, like hoodies this day or certain different kind of gear, different days throughout the season where there's an extra benefit as well that gets announced on the Tribal Council, right?
That is right. There's a code that's put out in the Tribal Council for all subscribers. And it could be like 25% off of headgear, 25% off of hoodies, or what. I mean, it's a fantastic membership. Just as if you think of it about it as a savings card, it's going to pay for itself. But that says nothing of the immense work that Ira and staff put together. I'll join them sometimes on the website side of it, but there's excellent stuff available to you and the largest FSU fan community. It's a no-brainer, so head to warchant.com and sign up today. All right, Ira, so they're going to Jacksonville. There's a scrimmage Sunday night. Is there a one more thing in the moonlight tonight? You got one that you're reaching back for, or do you think we've hit it?
I'm good, buddy. I think we've covered it all. I think we've covered the gamut.
All right.
I'm just glad to be smashing again, and glad that we're going to be doing it regularly again here with football returning.
It is back, everybody. We are inside of 4 weeks from college football season. Florida State's first game of the season. That's pretty cool. Make sure to hit the like button on this video. If we missed something or you want answers to something, perhaps we will treat that comment or question with full screen respect next time we convene on the Smash. So if there's something you think we missed or something you think we need to hear, make sure that you put it in the comments underneath this video. If you're watching on Warchant TV on YouTube, leave us a review on the podcast feed if you would as well. For Ira, I'm Tom. We will talk to you next time right here on Warchant TV. Our thanks to the Copper Drip for sponsoring this week's Smash.